In the business world today, change isn't some special event anymore. It's just constant. It's the air we breathe. And that brings up a huge question for any leader. How do you actually guide your team when everything feels like it's shifting under your feet? Well, today we're going to unpack a really powerful playbook that's designed for exactly that, for leading the human side of change. So let's really dig into that question. Think about it. When the path forward is foggy, when you don't have all the answers, how do you lead? This isn't just some small challenge. Honestly, it's often the one thing that makes or breaks a huge project. It really all comes down to how you guide your people through that uncertainty. And that really gets to a huge shift in how we have to think. Leading change isn't a side project you manage. It's a constant. This isn't some nice-to-have skill anymore. It is an absolutely core part of being a leader today. It's essential if you want to survive, let alone grow. And this right here, this quote, absolutely nails the core problem. People don't resist change. They resist being changed. Let that sink in for a second. It is a total game changer. It means that the pushback you feel, it's almost never about the new software or the new process itself. It's this really gut-level human reaction to feeling like you're losing control. Okay, so if that's the human challenge, what's the solution? How do we deal with that? Well, this is where the ADKAR framework comes into play. I want you to think of it like a map, a guide, specifically for the human side of change. It's a proven, super reliable tool that gives you a clear path to follow with your team. So ADKR, it's actually an acronym, and it lays out 5 key stages that people have to go through in order. It all starts with awareness, that's the why. Then comes desire, the personal want to. From there, we move to knowledge, which is the how-to. That's followed by ability, which is having the actual skills to do it. And finally, reinforcement, which is all about how you make it stick. We're going to break down each one of these. All right, enough with the theory. Let's get really practical. We're about to walk through the ADKAR leadership playbook, step by step, and I'm going to give you specific actionable things you can do at each stage to really lead your team well.
First up is awareness. Look, this is the absolute foundation for everything else. Before you ask a single person to do anything differently, they have to understand the why. They need to get the business reasons for the change, and maybe even more importantly, the risks of just staying put.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, you hold transparent town halls. You communicate that why over and over and over again. You have to be honest about the risks if you don't change, and you connect it all back to the bigger company goals. And let's be clear, this isn't about being a cheerleader. It's about being transparent. Okay, so now they get the why. The next, and maybe trickiest part, is desire. This is where it gets really personal. This isn't about company mandates, it's about individual motivation. Because trust me, every single person on your team is quietly asking, okay, but what's in it for me? And it's your job to help them find a good answer. So how do you spark that desire? Well, you don't just tell them what to do. You invite them in to help build the solution. That gives them a sense of ownership. You connect the change to what they care about, to their own career goals. You talk about resistance openly. You don't hide from it. And here's a pro tip. Find those influential people on the team and make them your champions. All right, so your team is aware, and they're starting to get on board. Now comes knowledge. This is the nuts and bolts how-to part of the journey. This is where you give them the training, the information, and the clear processes they need to actually succeed in this new world. So your job as a leader here is to be a great teacher, basically. Think short, bite-sized learning modules they can watch anytime. Provide super clear documents and cheat sheets they can reference later. Host Q&A sessions so they can ask questions. But most of all, make sure every bit of training is 100% relevant to their actual day-to-day job. Now, this next one is so important. Knowledge and ability. They sound the same, right? But they are completely different. See, knowledge is reading the cookbook. Ability is actually cooking the meal without burning the kitchen down. It's where the theory hits the real world. So how do you build that real-world skill? First, you gotta create a safe space for people to practice, a place where it's okay to make mistakes. You provide one-on-one coaching. You actively hunt down and remove roadblocks that are getting in their way. And probably the most important thing, be patient. Give people time to get up to speed. Nobody's a pro on day one. All right, we're at the final step, reinforcement. And honestly, this is the one that almost everyone messes up. It's why so many great initiatives just fizzle out after a few months. This is all about making sure the new way of doing things actually sticks and becomes the new normal, so people don't just slide back into their old habits. Your plays here as a leader, man, they are so powerful. You gotta celebrate the small wins to build momentum. You have to publicly recognize the people who are really embracing the change. You gather feedback, you measure success, so you can show people it's working. And this is huge. You have to make sure your reward systems actually match the new way you want people to work. So, when you step back and look at all 5 of these stages together, you see it's about so much more than just a project plan. When you use a framework like this, your role completely transforms. You stop being a task manager and you become a guide for your people, helping them move from that initial resistance all the way to real resilience. So it really boils down to this, and it's simple to say, but it's everything in practice. Guide your people, don't just manage them. When you use this playbook, you're not just rolling out a new system, you're actually building a stronger, more adaptable team for the long run. So right now, I want you to think about that next big project you've got coming up, that new technology, that reorganization, whatever it is. With a playbook like this, you can actually lead that change instead of just sending out an email and hoping for the best. And I want to leave you with this one last thought. It's from the legendary Peter Drucker. He said, "The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic." The ADKAR playbook, well, that's today's logic. That's the tool you need to navigate the turbulence. Thanks for joining this explanator.